grow out of it by about 18 months. It's called object permanence, meaning the thing is there whether you are looking at it or not. Well, the president perhaps hasn't reached that stage yet, at least not when it comes to the virus that has now claimed more than 116,000 lives in this country. Today, as you'll hear, he expressed the notion that if you just stopped testing for it, coronavirus wouldn't be a problem anymore, which sounds pretty simple. It means that somehow figures show the number of cases rising in all those states you see in light and dark red there on the map. They have nothing to do with people actually showing up sick at hospitals or put on ventilators or still dying in this country. No, instead, according to the president, just stop testing. Then the problem's solved because it goes away because no one knows about it. So therefore, it doesn't happen. Here's what Mr. Trump said today.
Our testing is so far advanced, it's so much bigger and better than any other country that we're going to have more cases. We're always going to have more cases. If you don't test, you don't have any cases. If we stop testing right now, we'd have very few cases, if any.
Now, keeping them honest, that makes no sense. I mean, in the twisted logic of hiding facts, if that's your plan, yes. If you don't test anyone, you won't know how widespread the virus has spread, and you won't be able to respond and prepare and save lives, but there would still be just as many cases. You might hide it, which the president clearly would like to do, but people will still be sick, and some will die. Texas today reported a record number of people hospitalized with COVID-19. Not merely testing positive, but actually sick, and sick enough to go to the hospital. According to forecasting from the CDC, as I mentioned, by July 1st, anywhere from 2,500 to 12,000 people will be hospitalized with new cases of coronavirus every single day. Now again, those are actual people getting truly ill, and they won't stop getting ill if testing stops. They won't stop dying. You just won't know why they got sick. They'll still be showing up at hospitals, still spending weeks in ICUs, and still dying. What's so stunning about today's statement by the president is that it's actually not the first time he's used this ridiculous logic or said ridiculous and contradictory and frankly false things about testing. He's had many things to say. Take a look.
We're testing everybody that we need to test. Anybody that wants a test can get a test. We took over an obsolete, broken testing system. There's not a lot of issues with testing. The governors are supposed to do testing. We are lapping the world on testing. We have so much testing. I don't think you need that kind of testing and that much testing. We've done more testing than every other country combined. So in a way, by doing all of this testing, we make ourselves look bad. I've always said testing is somewhat overrated. Something can happen between a test where it's good and then something happens and all of a sudden. This is why the whole concept of tests aren't necessarily great. But testing certainly is a very important function, and we have prevailed.
We have prevailed, he said. But it's overrated, he said. But we're the best in the world. America's first in testing. Also first in deaths. But we make ourselves look bad because we're first in testing. Notice what's missing is any real conception of what testing is truly for, of the early warning it can give, of the deaths it can prevent. By the president's formulation, testing is either something to boast about or make him look bad. And it's not just testing, it's suspension of disbelief that the virus is still a grave danger. So much so that he is insisting on holding a massive rally indoors in Tulsa on Saturday. And today, when asked, Vice President Pence talked about why the idea of cramming 19,000 people, many of them older, from all parts of the country into a crowded arena for hours on end was actually a good idea.
Oklahoma has really been in the forefront of our efforts to slow the spread, and in a very real sense, they flattened the curve. And today, their hospital capacity is abundant.
Now, keeping them honest, that is simply not true. What's fascinating about Vice President Pence is his whole job is to sound folksy and stable and broad-shouldered and make it sound like there's a rational person who's actually listening to what the president is saying and agrees with it and is communicating exactly what the president is saying. Here's the daily case rate for Oklahoma over the last 2 weeks. The line represents a 5-day moving average. And as you can see, that line is up at the end of those 14 days. It's not down. And over the weekend, Tulsa's top public health official had this piece of advice concerning the rally. Quote, "If you want to stay safe, don't go."
Within the last hour, I just chaired a meeting of senior executives of the police department. It is regarding the deployment of precinct level and PSA level anti-crime units. These are the plainclothes units that operate our traditional anti-crime. Effective immediately. We will be transitioning those units, roughly 600 people citywide, into a variety of assignments, including Detective Bureau, neighborhood policing, and other assignments. Why? This is 21st century policing. Intelligence, data, ShotSpotter, video, DNA, and building prosecutable cases. It continues to be building these cases on a small number of people that unfortunately still terrorize parts of this city. However, the key difference, we must do it in a manner that builds trust between the officers and the community they serve. I started speaking about a number of reforms that have just recently been passed. Make no mistake, this is a seismic shift in the culture of how the NYPD polices this great city. It will be felt immediately throughout the 5 district attorney's offices. It will be felt immediately in the communities that we protect.
Let me bring in retired LAPD Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. And so first, explain to those of us, when we hear anti-crime team, right, these men and women who will now be reassigned, what exactly do they do? And do you think that this is a good decision on behalf of NYPD?
So this is a unit much like what we have here in Los Angeles within our Metropolitan Division. These are the officers who are sometime in uniform or plain clothes, and they don't respond to radio calls for service. They do proactive pretext stops in the hopes of finding someone who may have a gun or have drugs. I call them elephant hunters, the big game hunters, the Billy Bad A, right? These are the ones who kick butt and take names, and they jump out of cars anonymously in their plain clothes uniform, and they rough people up, and sometimes they get the wrong person and then they just drive off. My bad. Not even an apology, not even a business card. And so while this is a great first step, let's not get all beside ourselves here, because this is the same Dermot Shea who said when he took office that, you know, the citizens of New York are going to respect his officers. I hear folks talking about doing everything, Brooke, except for that 4-letter word, accountability. Why won't they just hold officers who misbehave accountable? Because I promise you, as a patrol officer and a patrol supervisor for 20 years, when officers who are in patrol see their peers sitting in a courtroom addressing murder charges, they'll conduct themselves differently. We can't even in the midst of protests stop officers from killing folks. So you had 57 officers from the ER department step down. Why? Because they were offended that 2 of their officers were fired and charged for shoving a 75-year-old man down and cracking his head open. So until you change that mindset, we're going to continue to have this problem. And so thank you, Mr. Shea, for moving the 600 Billy Bad Butts. But how about we hold officers accountable when we see them commit misconduct?
Texas deals with an increase in cases of COVID-19. CNN is now learning that several NFL players there have tested positive for the virus, raising questions just even about the league's upcoming season. According to NFL Network, multiple players with the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans have been infected. CNN's Ed Lavandera is live for us in Dallas this afternoon with more. Ed, what can you tell us about this?
Well, as you mentioned, Brooke, this really does call into question exactly what is the NFL going to do in the next few months as it prepares for the 2020 football season. As you know, the National Basketball Association and Major League Baseball kind of mired in figuring out how to restart their seasons. And this news coming here, not only as the number of cases in Texas continues to go up, but several months ago, there were a number of Dallas Cowboys players who had kind of stirred up a bit of a controversy as they, Dak Prescott, the quarterback of the Cowboys, had hosted a party and then there were a number of players holding workouts. So it was a bit of a controversy surrounding some of these players' actions as to whether or not they were following social distancing guidelines and that sort of thing. But this news does come as the league prepares to begin the 2020 season. The Houston Texans and the Dallas Cowboys are not commenting officially on the name players that are reportedly infected with the coronavirus. They say they cannot comment on that, citing federal and local privacy laws. But the NFL is in the process of trying to figure out how to reopen. It was just earlier this month that the commissioner of the NFL put out a memo to all of the teams allowing that the coaching staff and up to 100 employees could return to training facilities and resume working. But again, that was just the first step. How this news affects what happens next is unknown at this point, but it's clearly something that the league is grappling with as it figures out what the 2020 season is going to look like. Brooke?
And Jeffrey Toobin, how monumental this is, and the fact that Justice Gorsuch wrote this decision and was joined by the Chief Justice. People were looking at Gorsuch and looking in oral arguments at what he said, and the question was, where was he going to fall? And now it's very clear.
Well, this is a fascinating and enormously important decision, and it all turned on the meaning of one word. One word in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is sex. Because it was quite clear that the Civil Rights Act barred discrimination on the basis of gender. Like, you can't fire someone just because they're a woman. But does the word sex also mean sexual orientation and transgender status? And what the Supreme Court decided today by a vote of 6-3 is that it does. That means you can't fire someone simply because they are gay. That's a violation of federal law. It's an important point to realize is that most courts that had addressed this issue previously, not all of them, but most courts had gone the other way, had said that that the word sex did not include sexual orientation. But the Supreme Court has spoken very clearly in this decision, 6-3, that it is now unlawful under federal law to fire someone simply because they are LGBT or they're transgender, and it's a big difference from how the law was a half an hour ago the way it is today.
Yes.
American imprisoned Moscow, Paul Whelan, has just been sentenced to 16 years in prison. Whelan has been detained since 2018 on espionage charges. He maintains he's innocent. The U.S. ambassador to Russia calls his trial a mockery of justice. CNN's Matthew Chance joins us now. Matthew, tell us what's behind this, and has the president attempted to intervene?
Well, as far as we know, Jim, he hasn't. Certainly at the sentence hearing today, Paul Whelan stood there inside that glass secure box that is such a feature of Russian courthouses, and sort of made a protest before the sentence was handed down to him. He said it was a sham trial. It's something he said before. He appealed to the President of the United States to intervene to secure his release, along with the leaders of other countries, Britain, Canada, Ireland. He also has passports from those countries as well, to try and intervene, to try and get some justice or some hearing for him, because this has been a controversial case from the outset. He was arrested in December 2018 in an upscale Moscow hotel. Details of it have always been very sketchy because there's a national security issue, the Russians say, at stake here. They haven't even allowed us to hear any witness statements. No evidence has been presented. But Paul Whelan, for his part, and his family and US officials have said from the outset this is absolutely fabricated. He has nothing to do with US intelligence, is what US officials say, and he was merely set up potentially as a bargaining chip. Now, the Russians obviously take a very different view. The prosecution asked for 18 years to be handed down to him for espionage. The Russian foreign minister in the past, Sergei Lavrov, has said that he was caught red-handed spying. And so, we've had this standoff set up. And so the big question next is how long will Paul Whelan stay in Russian custody? He's been given this sentence of 16 years. But as I say, from the outset, there's always been this speculation that he's some kind of bargaining chip, or could become a bargaining chip, perhaps for the Russians to get the release of some Russian national. And there are several of them being held in US prisons, Jim.
Beyonce is calling for justice in the death of Breonna Taylor, an African-American woman who was killed by police after they went into the wrong home. Melissa. Good morning. So tell me a little bit about Beyonce and how she wrote a letter to the Kentucky Attorney General.
Good morning, Robin. That's right. Beyonce wrote an open letter and posted it on her website on Sunday, and it is an open letter addressed to the Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron. And in the letter, she goes into detail about Breonna Taylor's death. She points out it's been 3 months since Breonna Taylor's death and says that the officers involved should face prosecution. Beyonce also calls for an investigation into the police department's handling of the incident. Beyonce says that these actions would, quote, demonstrate the value of a black woman's life. Now, Louisville police fatally shot 26-year-old Taylor during a no-knock warrant raid on the wrong apartment. No drugs were found. The suspect had already been arrested. The Kentucky Attorney General's office told CNN they are aware of Beyonce's letter.
So this is what it looks like when you enter Chaz. You see some of this graffiti behind me. There might be a security person here asking a few questions or just trying to make sure that you're not somebody who's going to stir up trouble.
We're just making sure that there's no violence or, anything against people of color. That's why we're here.
Then you walk 200 or 300 feet, and then you're in the heart of the zone. This is the main focal point of the occupation zone, the police precinct behind me. People have put up messages, they've made signs, and a lot of folks are just coming by and taking in the site. How would you describe Chaz in the occupation?
Oh, it's good. It's a lot of people out here, unity, trying to get this equality thing going, and it's very peaceful out here.
One of the more remarkable things about the occupation is the infrastructure. They are incredibly well stocked for the long haul.
See all those plastic bags with cards in it? Those are all individual donor cards. So most of this stuff just comes one bag of groceries at a time from folks in the community who want to help take care of each other. Yeah, we have so much stuff we can't get enough people to take it right now.
A lot of people are on this field. They might be relaxing or having a picnic. You can see this meditation society behind me. Doesn't really look like the picture of anarchy. What are your immediate impressions?
It seems like it's a great way to demonstrate what's happening, and this is a very revolutionary time in our history, and I think my kids need to see it, and it seems peaceful and under control.
It's a good vibe. It's a good vibe. I mean, we got a million people here that got different opinions. It's not a million, but everybody got a different opinion. So yeah, we're going to hear some screaming and yelling, but it's only their opinion.
We've seen a lot of different groups hold various events here. This is a group of Native Americans behind me doing a drum ceremony. Now, is everything Pollyannish here? Obviously not. We have seen some tempers flare, especially when somebody tries to interrupt a speaker. And some folks are openly carrying weapons. Remember, Washington is an open carry state.
There's only a couple little bullets in this guy right here. It's, this is not for the police. I'm an American citizen, and my war is not with the police. It's with the system and the accountability, the lack of accountability. But no, this is just for protection.
What do you think of Chaz?
This is the most beautiful thing. It's so hopeful. I've been a lot of festivals around the world, and what I see is just something very similar, like love and giving and self-organized policing and yeah, just a lot of good vibes, rainbows, and it's really hopeful for me.